living fully alive in every way. You're listening to Relationship Prescriptions with Dr. Carol.
Hello, friends, and welcome again to Relationship Prescriptions with Dr. Carol. So glad that you have joined me, that you're part of our podcast family. It's March, and in many parts of the country, spring is just kind of getting started. I have been doing a lot of traveling recently, and when I'm up north, there's still snow on the ground. Where my home is in Texas, there are flowers that are coming out. Wherever you are, I pray that you are seeing some new life this spring. And that's what I want to talk with you about, taking in new life. We often talk on this program about the kind of fully alive life that Jesus came to give all of us, physically, emotionally, relationally, and spiritually. But we have to take that in. We cannot generate life on our own. We must choose to find where God makes life available to us and take it into our being. This is going to be the first of a two-part series on this podcast. So this is Taking in Life Part 1. Think of this as learning to feed yourself. When you were a child, you were totally dependent on others to decide what you ate, when, how much, and so on. As you grew up, there was a time when you learned to feed yourself. And now, as an adult, you need to decide when you're hungry, what kind of food to take in, to find it, prepare it, and actually eat it. Take it into your body. Well, the nourishment that we need from God in all parts of our lives comes through various means. Just like our physical food, God makes it available, but He doesn't harvest the grain, grind it, bake your bread, and hand you a sandwich. He makes fish in the sea, but He doesn't catch them, bake it, and put a fish on your plate for dinner. We have to take steps to find, prepare, choose to take in that life. It's just the same with the nourishment all areas of our lives need. Now, there are various qualities of that kind of nourishment. In making the analogy to our physical food, that may be like fast food on one side or a gourmet meal on the other. When you are evaluating the nourishment you are taking in various parts of your lives, it's worth it to think in those terms. For example, fast food may quiet the hunger pains in your stomach for a period of time, and there are times it's necessary, but it does not provide near the nourishment that higher quality food makes available. A gourmet meal is likely to be much more satisfying, not only to the hunger pains in your stomach, but to the whole experience, the whole totality of your person. It also takes more time, it's higher quality, and both the preparation and the time involved in taking that in is worth it for the higher quality of nourishment. Jesus acknowledged the different qualities of nourishment that we need. He referenced this, for example, in John 2, where he talks about the wine that was prepared for the wedding feast, the very first miracle that Jesus ever performed, providing wine for a marriage feast. Well, in that story, the record in John says that the governor of the feast, when he tasted the good wine that Jesus had prepared, said, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and when people have drunk freely, then the poor wine, but you have kept the good wine until now." When we intentionally choose the good, high-quality nourishment, it makes a difference. I'd like to share with you some of the quality nourishment that I choose to take into my being on a regular basis in various areas of life. And I pray that this will be somewhat helpful for you as well in evaluating the nourishment that you are taking in. In this part one of this podcast, I'll be discussing physical nourishment and mental emotional nourishment. And then in part two, we'll evaluate relational nourishment and spiritual nourishment. So, first, on the physical realm, that of course involves the things you have heard about from probably many other sources. Physically, that means what we eat, our physical activity, exercise, and rest. I, over the years, have intentionally learned a lot more about the kinds of nourishment my body does well with. Of course, in our Western culture today, there are so many options for processed foods. There is nothing magic about spending a lot of money in choosing food, but it is important to be intentional. Food that comes as close to the natural way that God prepared it is better. I sometimes get asked if paying the extra money for organic produce or organic meat is worth it. I want to say that the first place to focus that I have done and that I believe is worth it for you to do too, focus choosing your food to get away from processed. The processing that our food goes through adds so many chemicals and removes some of the good stuff. That goes for processed grains, it goes for produce, it goes for meats. Getting away from processed is the first place to make a change in your nutrition. For example, lunch meats, incredibly processed with so many more chemicals, sodium, and so on, not a healthy option. Same thing with processed frozen dinners. The more convenient, the more ingredients, the longer the shelf life, the less healthy. This is really highlighted when it comes to grains. There has been a lot of talk about staying away from gluten, for example, and in some cases, you may have a gluten allergy and do better staying away from gluten. But for the majority of people, the issue is the processed grains. There is some great science showing that processed flour is damaging to your health, just like sugar is. But whole grains, for example, are totally different. And from what I see in the scientific literature, whole grains such as brown rice, quinoa, oats, and so on can be very healthy in your diet. They have a very different effect on your body compared to the processed grains. Totally different. Same thing with produce. So, my challenge to you is to look at what you are eating and move away from processed foods in some area. I have had to be very intentional about this because I am traveling a great deal in this season of my life. And when you're traveling, it becomes so easy to go for what is processed, prepared, quick. I have to really pay extra attention to more vegetables, to less processed protein and things like that. So that is my challenge to you in moving away from processed food. Choose one processed food that you normally eat and get a less processed alternative. Maybe breakfast cereals, processed breakfast cereals is something you normally go to. Okay, first step, move to less processed cereal with less sugar, less refined. And then even better, move to something like oatmeal, even less processed still. For dinner, for example, maybe you get fast food periodically because of a schedule, or you use, frozen TV dinners. Okay, at least a couple times a week, move away from that and get a natural chicken breast or a frozen fish, not prepared, not breaded, just some fish, and prepare that instead, moving away from processed. Now, also in the taking in life physically, I have had to become very intentional about my exercise program. I don't naturally enjoy exercise. I know many people do, and if you do, that's great. I, in some respects, have a love-hate relationship with exercise, so I have had to be very intentional here. The place I am most intentional about is getting in steps. I do have an app on my phone. I use my Fitness Pal, and I use it only to help track my steps. Now, you can get a whole lot more sophisticated there. Of course, there are Fitbits or Apple Watch or lots of other ways to track your steps. But I have found that it's almost a game. And when I check my steps, at least I know I'm moving more. I have found that I will walk around while I'm on the phone. If I am on a phone call and it's on my cell phone and I will walk around while I'm talking on the phone and get some steps in there. I'll walk up the stairs. Those kinds of things get my body moving, and it makes a great difference in my emotional state when I am moving more. I also have started to be much more intentional about muscle training, muscle strength. I have some little 2-weight barbells. Now, they're not a whole lot, but just to use those with exercising my arms while I'm preparing my dinner in the evening. If I, am baking a potato or having something boil on the stove, even if it's just 5 minutes, to use those barbells and get a very, even just minimal bit of strength training for my upper body, building that into my regular lifestyle has been a very good thing. And I want to encourage you to do that as well. And then my rest program. Rest is something that is much more than sleep. It needs to start with sleep, of course. I have found that I need about 7 hours of sleep a night. When I get less than that, my mood is worse. I am much more irritable. I don't think as clearly. Now, I know there is a variation in the amount of sleep people need, but I want to strongly encourage you to be intentional about your sleep. Going to bed at regularly the same time, getting up at about the same time, sleeping in on weekends has problems, so try and being as intentional about that as possible. Some people have trouble with sleep, either trouble falling asleep or waking up frequently. Here is a technique that I have found helpful that you may as well. When my mind starts going around and around about something and it's bothering me, I have learned to imagine a container for those thoughts. There's a box on the shelf or something like that that I imagine in my mind, and then I put those thoughts in that box, close the lid, and imagine putting that up on the shelf. Those things to deal with will still be there in the morning. Ruminating about those during the night is not going to find a solution or be very helpful. So intentionally choosing to put those thoughts in a place where I can pick them up tomorrow if I need to. And that can help my mind rest for sleep. I have also, when it comes to this, found it so important to plan rhythms of work. At a certain hour in the evening, I know that my brain is not going to be functional. So even if there's a lot yet to process and do, I know that trying to push through later in the evening is just not going to be productive. So there is a specific hour in the evening when I stop. And picking things up again in the morning after rest, I will be much more efficient. I'm also going to speak more in part 2 of this about the Sabbath rhythm of rest, the weekly rhythm of rest. That certainly impacts our physical bodies as well as our emotions. I'll talk more about that next time. So taking care of bringing in life to you physically, that's some of the things that I do in diet and exercise and rest, and perhaps that's helpful. Now, taking in life mentally and emotionally. Those of you who may have uh, followed me and been listening for a while know that there was a period of time when I was a young woman, 25 years ago or so, when I went through a period of severe distress. Thankfully, God brought me wonderful healing and growth. But through that process, I learned a number of things that are important in nourishing myself mentally and emotionally, taking care of my mind. Just like our physical bodies need care, our minds need care. Rest is part of that. But there are also a number of other things that bring in life mentally and emotionally that I do. And I believe you may need some of these as well. Taking in good information, good encouragement, good inspiration with books and podcasts and online resources is so important. I regularly read. I keep a book with me almost all the time. I listen to several podcasts every week about things that are important in my personal growth. Certainly, entertainment can be fine, but television is mostly just that. Books and podcasts can be so much more nourishing in education, in learning, in inspiration, and I regularly spend a few hours a week in those pursuits. I don't think I can even put into words how important that has been for my personal growth. During different seasons of my life, I have focused my reading and podcast listening in different areas. For a season, that might be learning business and finance and marketing a bit as I've been doing some things to grow this ministry. I have at times focused my reading and podcast listening on emotional health and growth, specifically listening to experts who have worked in counseling or emotional health and taking in that kind of life. About marriage and relationships, learning things from experts in that area. You can get an education today for free if you intentionally take in books and podcasts. I have found that so critical in my own life. Then there is the mental emotional nourishment that comes from beauty, from nature, from music. I don't believe that God intended for our minds to work all the time. Part of the nourishment our minds and emotions need is taking in beauty. And I encourage you to do that. In my home, I have a large tree in my backyard. It's what's called a legacy oak tree. It's been there for a long, long time. It's big, it's beautiful. Simply going out on my back porch and enjoying that piece of God's nature is nourishing. Music can be nourishing. I encourage you to find the things that nourish your soul emotionally in that way, that are beautiful, that are close to God. Nature and music, I believe, are two of those. And then I want to mention some questions that I try and ask myself every day. Now, I don't do this perfectly, but it has helped me mentally keep in a healthy frame of mind. This comes from a story I heard, and I'm not sure even where this story originated. I would like to give credit, but I can't. I don't know where I heard this. But the story goes something like this. There was a Jewish rabbi who was walking along one day, lost in thought, lost in reverie. This was centuries ago in Israel. And as he was walking along, he came to the entrance to a Roman garrison. The sentry at the entrance to that garrison called out to the rabbi, "Where are you going? Who are you? What are you doing?" And it kind of startled the rabbi out of his reverie. He stopped and saw the sentry, and he said, "Say that again." And the sentry called out, "Who are you? Where are you going? What are you doing?" The rabbi paused for a moment, and then he asked the sentry, "How much are they paying you to stand here at the entrance and ask people these questions?" The sentry told him, and the rabbi said, "I will pay you twice as much to stand at my front door and ask me those questions every morning. Who are you? What are you doing? Where are you going?" I try and ask myself those questions every day, and I have adjusted those questions, edited them in this way. And so here's what I ask myself: who are you? Where are you going? And what would you do today if what God told you is true? Of course, what God says is true. Knowing that, what would you do today? That has been a very helpful and powerful way that I have kept myself focused. And perhaps that will be helpful to you. It helps me know that my energy is being directed in the direction that I believe God wants me to direct my energies. And it helps remind me that I am here for a reason, that God has a purpose, and that is where I choose to focus my energy for today. Here's my challenge to you. Consider the things you are taking into your body that give you physical life, and the things that you are taking into your mind that give you mental, emotional life. Are those things nourishing? Are you getting the nourishment that your body and your mind need on a regular basis? What are the things that sap your body and your mind? What is draining life from you? Are there any of those things that are draining life from you that you can adjust? Now, all of us put out. We cannot only take in, we must also put out. That's part of how God created us as humans, and that's great, that's wonderful. But in this season, intentionally look at the things that are draining life from you, see if some of those can be adjusted, and then more importantly, what changes do you need to make in your lifestyle so that your physical body is taking in the life it needs, and so that your mind and emotions are taking in the life that they need? I pray that that has been stimulating and encouraging to you, especially in this spring season when new life is all around us. I pray that these challenges will help you step up the taking in life aspects that you need so that you can come to the next level of that fully alive kind of life that Jesus wants for you. I want to thank you for being part of our podcast family. I'd love to hear from you. If there is a question or a comment, something that you might like to hear about on an upcoming episode, you can go to drcarolministries.com/podcasts and leave me a comment. I so love to hear from you. Thank you again. And until next time, may God bless you.
Thank you for listening to Relationship Prescriptions with Dr. Carol. Our purpose is to provide trustworthy resources that help you and others live fully alive in every way as God intended. If you would like to help others experience transformation in their lives and relationships, we invite you to partner with us. Text the word GIVE, that's GIVE, to the number 512-980-1620, or visit our website at drcarolministries.com/donate to make a one-time contribution or monthly gift. Your financial support allows us to expand our message and to help others. Thank you so much, and may God bless you.